Good morning, everyone. Hello, like Rex said, I'm Denae. I've been a member of the club for a couple of years now. And I specialise in Americana chickens. So I've been breeding those for a couple of years. Certainly don't claim to know it all. And the first thing you need to know about chickens is keeping them. So there's no right or wrong on the spaces required, the design of chicken houses. They come in many great sizes and shapes. But there are a few rules and regulations surrounding that. The first one is that if you're keeping chickens in a permanent run, they will need to have at least 1 square metre per chook. It's a little less for bantams, but that is the minimum required by the law. So anything more than that is fantastic. If they've got a run, even better. Keeping them under things like fruit trees is also a bonus. Chooks like to perch, they like to perch up high, so they're going to need something to sleep on, and it's called a roost. And something round and about arm thickness is the best sort of perch for chickens. The only problem with having perches is that if they're wood, they can get mites, and so you do need to watch out for pests and diseases. You also need to keep the chickens on something, and I've got the code of practice for chickens, and it states impervious material, so you can use that of your own choosing. It can be concrete, it can be hard dirt with a deep litter system, and you'll need to keep that clean, so you can put something on the ground there and it needs to be cleaned out every now and then. You can use lots of different things for a deep litter system. You can use lucerne, straw is good, but you just need to watch out for mites. It can hide mites and things. The wood shavings are really good. Rice hulls are also another great material, but you can basically use any organic material. So you can throw in leaves and other bits of garden waste as well, and they'll turn that over and make that lovely compost. You can then shovel that out and use that on your garden. So they're often chickens are used in integrated pest management systems with garbage and things like that. So you can use your litter on the garden. Chickens can be susceptible to pests and diseases. So a few of the main ones you need to look out for are lice and mites. And mice and mites like to hide on chickens in certain areas. So to check a chicken for lice or mites, you grab the chicken, and around the vent is a good place to start. So you can have a little look down there to see if they're hiding anything. Also, mites don't necessarily live on the chicken, they live in the litter, and they come out at night and they suck the blood from the chickens. So they can make them quite anemic. But they'll often have little sores on their faces or something like that, or sores around their neck if they're being sucked on. Fleas hide under the wings, and so the chickens need to be dusted every few months. And I didn't bring any dusting powder with me today. That's okay, but you pop some on the bottom, and then you turn the chicken over, and you put some under the wings, so just rough it all around. Chickens also can get worms, so chickens will need to be wormed as well. There's a few different worming solutions on the market, so really need to follow it to the letter when worming the chickens. You can get it in liquid form or tablet form. And a bit like giving a tablet to a cat, you can do it. It's a bit hard for me, I've got about 100 chickens. I prefer the water method, but it's quite easy. So you just hold them close, open their mouth, and you can pulp them with a tablet in there. That's not too hard. And a few diseases that we get that are common in Canberra is fowl pox. So yes, chickens can get chicken pox, and they get little lesions and scabs on their heads and their faces. They can look really quite nasty. It's mosquito-borne disease, so try and keep water, pools of water down the middle. looking for it's a good thing to spend as much time with your chickens as you can, and you'll find that very therapeutic as well. And so if you find your chickens aren't moving very much, sitting huddled and crouched, or looking very pale and unwell is a good sign of a sick chook. And it could be, they can be sick for a range of things. Chickens molt once a year, which means that they lose their feathers and they grow new ones. They'll often stop laying at that time as well, so people say, oh, my chooks are sick, they've stopped laying and all their feathers are falling. They do tend to look a bit unwell when this happens. So give them some extra treats, a bit of corn or some warm oil and a bit more protein, even some meat meal to help them through it. The eggs and the feathers are both 100% protein, and they can't grow new feathers while they're laying eggs at the same time. The eyes of browns will also molt eventually in their first year, after their first year. And a good way to keep the chickens looking nice and healthy is to feed them a complete chicken food. You can get complete chicken preparations from pet stores or Brindle stock feeds. They're fantastic. They also deliver. So I can give them a call and say, oh, Stark, help me out, and they come and they'll deliver on their days. Things you shouldn't feed your chickens. There's a few things you shouldn't feed your chickens. Avocado skins are toxic, and they're not real fond of citrus. So try and keep the scraps to a minimum and make sure there's no mouldy scraps. They can eat meat and things like that. I don't tend to feed my chickens a lot of meat product. But yeah, so, and long grass, try not to give them too much long grass. It can bind their crops up. The crop is, they'll eat and eat and eat at night, and they'll look a bit lopsided. There's a huge lump on one side and it's going to tip over. I've had people ring me and say, help, my chicken's got cancer. It's got this huge lump rolling out the side. What do I do? And so they'll fill that up with food at night, and a sick chook that often won't be good. And too much long grass can bind them up, and they can get quite an offensive odour coming from their mouth as well. So if you think your chook's looking a bit sick, have a smell of their breath. It can often be a sign of illness. So chickens should mostly eat a pellet form. You can get grain forms of that. Chickens like that just as much as the pellets. I think they make a grain because it looks nice and tasty to eat. But the pellets work just as well. So a complete feed, something with a good protein level, 18 or slightly less, between 15 and 18. The problem with having some of the commercial breeds is that they require a higher protein, and they suffer from egg laying problems. From your pure breed chook, you probably get between 5 and 6 eggs a week, but they will lay for longer. So they'll lay up to about 8 to 10 years. I've heard some people, if they're pure breed chickens lay. You certainly won't get commercial breeds laying or even living to any of that sort of time.
Hey Denae, do chooks lay over winter?
Some chooks do lay over winter. But most of them will take a break for about 8 weeks over winter, and so they'll grow their new feathers and they'll stop laying because they can't do both. I've got Barnavelders, some Barnavelders, so they'll molt about midsummer, and so they came back on the lay a couple of months back, and so they should continue. They won't lay as many, so this is why I keep about 6 or 7 different pure breeds, because they all molt at different times, and so I don't get that egg drought that I did when I first had just one nostril, and they all laid fantastic all through summer, and all of a sudden I had this big egg drought for about 8 weeks. So I've discovered that different breeds will molt at different times, and so you can get almost a continuous egg supply. And the commercial guys keep their birds under light and heat as well because of the artificial summer the whole way through. And then so with your chook pens, there's a few different things you need to think about when you're building a pen. You can have things like the terrific little tractor over there, and you can move them around on the grass, or you can plonk them on your garden beds and rotate them around whenever you need a garden bed, and depending on how many you've got. You can build a huge big structure as well, a permanent structure. That's fine. But all your pens will need to be fox-proof, and if you've got dogs, dog-proof as well. So the way to fox-proof a pen, you can either have all mesh on the bottom, but it needs to be a fine mesh because the foxes can dig under, and if it's a big mesh, they can pull it through. So either mesh under and then put your deep litter, or what you can do is do a skirt. You can put wire around and then bring it out. 600 out. You can either dig that into the ground and then put dirt on top. The idea is the foxes will come and smell the cage here. I'll dig close through the cage, and they won't actually lift and come out to start digging. So they'll go up to the top dig, they don't get in. Foxes can climb, so they'll need some form of roof or a floppy top that's higher than 6 foot. So if they climb up and it sort of flops over, they can't get in. But if it's a stiff top, they can actually climb quite high. So foxes can climb. Also, they'll need, if you've got dogs in the area, the dogs can get into the dark, that's a full-grown dog ran out of the pen, you wouldn't be able to get through it. So it needs to be made of thick line. Okay. If you've got, half a dozen of these sort of chooks running around in your yard, certainly cats would be an issue. The other kinds of predators you're likely to get are aerial predators, so your hawks, falcons, eagles, even if you've got a heap of these, currawongs and the crows will come down and take some of these. If you've got small roosters, that might not be enough of a deterrent. I've got large eagles, hawks, that's certainly my place, but I've got large roosters that are enough of a deterrent. Also, when you're considering whereabouts in the yard to put them, make sure they've got some bushes and shrubs to hide in as well. The chickens are forest animals, and so they like things to hide under. It helps with predators as well, particularly aerial predators. Rats are a big problem at the moment, so you'll need to make sure that the cages or the chooks are safe from rats and mice. Rats and mice spread diseases, and they'll also take a rat will take a chicken like this. Also with your feed containers, make sure you've got metal containers or plastic containers. More metal if you're out of town and there is a rat problem, but something that the rats can't get into. So when you're thinking about feeders and feed containers, you can use hanging feeders, and that'll help minimise some of the rodent population. And if you've got mice and rats are a problem, you can bait, but be very careful with the bait. The bait is also toxic and will kill animals, particularly chickens, and they can also get secondary poison. So you kill all the mice with poison, and even the wild birds or chickens eat those rodents. They can get secondary poison. So really try and minimise the poison if you can.